Hello and welcome to the Tennessee Informer. I'm your host, Dave Vance. Thank you for tuning in. We did have Matt Throckmorton scheduled to be with us tonight, and we were going to talk about social emotional learning. Unfortunately, something has come up, and Matt's not going to be able to be here with us tonight. We will still have Chris Morris from Giles County with us tonight, and looking forward to talking to him. But first, we're going to do our updates and announcements. If you have an announcement from a conservative organization that you would like to announce on this show, please send the information to tninformer.tv@gmail.com the Friday before the show. The Stewart County GOP will meet this Thursday, January 25th, 6:30 p.m. at the Stewart County Visitor Center in Dover, located at 117 Visitor Center Lane off Donaldson Parkway, between Mamma Mia's Restaurant and Dover Elementary. We have a few county level candidates that will speak briefly. Then our election commissioner, Daniel Perigo, will demonstrate the new voting machines and take questions. If you want our state to step up and push back on our overreaching, often unconstitutional federal government, visit tncss.weebly.com and learn more about the legislation we hope to get passed this session that creates multiple processes for nullifying unconstitutional federal actions. The SEC of the state GOP recently passed a resolution in support of this legislation, as have county commissions in Jefferson, Sullivan, and Roane counties. More are in the works. Additionally, TNCSS has coordinated for Chris Ann Hall to appear live Saturday, February 24th from 10 to 12:30 p.m. at the Dynamic Ballroom and Performing Arts Center in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. This is a free but limited seating event, and you must RSVP. Go to the Events tab on the tncss.weebly.com site for more details. Chris Ann will be focusing on the issue of nullification. Last week on our show, our guest, Courtney Turner, spoke about NACs, which are natural asset companies, and the threat they pose to property rights and really our way of life. If you haven't already heard, the SEC withdrew their request for a rule that would have allowed NACs to be traded on the New York Stock Exchange. There was a lot of pushback in Congress against this, and 25 state AGs, including ours, sent a letter in protest of the plan. Stay alert on this issue because they will continue to try to exert more control of our land and resources. We want a battle, not the war. The bill filing deadline in the state legislature was January 31st, or is January 31st. No word yet on whether or not it will be extended due to being closed last week. I know that in addition to nullification legislation and gun legislation that will make us a true constitutional carry state, there are at least a couple of bills in the works to put teeth into the laws passed last year to keep obscene material out of our schools and libraries. As a reminder, the TFA website, that's Tennessee Firearms Association, they have a weekly tracker of gun legislation that they track and they send alerts out on. TFA has also joined GOA, which is Gun Owners of America, in an amicus brief in U.S. Supreme Court on behalf of Donald Trump in reference to the situation in Colorado. It was posted on January 19th, and it says the Tennessee Firearms Association and Tennessee Firearms Foundation joined Gun Owners of America and numerous other organizations in filing an amicus brief in the United States Supreme Court for the case of Donald Trump versus Norma Anderson, number 23-719. This is an appeal by Mr. Trump from the rulings in Colorado that attempted to block him in his presidential race from the state's ballot. Although the issues in this case are not directly Second Amendment focused, the outcome of the case could be critical for conservatives in Tennessee and across the nation. The amicus brief asserts that the state of Colorado has no authority, much less constitutional authority, to attempt to block Mr. Trump from the ballot in that state. Our guest tonight is Chris Morris, business owner, Giles County GOP Chair, and SEC member. Chris is going to fill us in on the serious problems caused by trans Republicans in the Tennessee GOP. If you don't know what that is, you'll hear in a minute. But before we get to that, we are going to talk a little bit about the border situation. Chris, thanks for coming on tonight. How are you doing?
Doing great, Dave. Great. Glad to be on your show.
Well, I'm glad to have you, and I appreciate you coming on. I know it was pretty short notice, but I'm really glad to have you. I'm sure you saw, as I did, that the Supreme Court has ruled that that the federal government can take down the barriers that Texas put up to keep illegals out of Texas and out of our country. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we do have a 10th Amendment and right of nullification. And Governor Abbott has done a great job in Texas and I'm ready for him to get up on his box and tell the federal government to go pound sand, because the states own the federal government. The federal government does not own the states.
Well, the state certainly created the federal government and not the other way around.
That's right. That's why I say we have the ownership,
yeah.
because the states created the federal government. The federal government did not create the states.
Absolutely. And this ruling, it's what's really so infuriating about it is well, I don't know where to start. There's so many things. Number one, the federal government, the issue is they're saying that the federal government has total authority on immigration issues. Well, to begin with, this is not an immigration issue. This is an invasion being led by our federal government. That same federal government that in the Constitution is supposed to protect us from invasion. On the issue of immigration, if you look at the Constitution, I'm sure you're aware of this, there's nothing in the Constitution that says anything at all about immigration. They talk about naturalization, but this is another one of those things created out of whole cloth by the Supreme Court over the years. This is not necessarily a new thing. They have for years said that
right.
The federal government has the final say on immigration issues, but yet there's nothing in the Constitution that they can point to. And once again, this is obviously not immigration, but an invasion.
It's total invasion. Go down to Eagle Pass in Texas and ask those citizens, legal people, how they truly feel about it and what it's done to their community, their county, and just take that as an example. Let's don't get into the whole state, because that county, it's bankrupting that particular area. And what just sickens me, and I know it does you as well, and any law-abiding constitutional citizen of this country, is we're giving these scoundrels, these people that are invading our country, $80,000 a year is what it's costing the taxpayers of the United States for each one of these illegals that come across that border.
Yep. We're paying for the invasion, and then we're paying to keep them here.
Well, that's this administration that's trying to turn the White House into the outhouse.
well, they're on track. They're definitely on track. And here's the thing too that was, say we know for a fact that this is not. It's not immigration. That should be obvious to the Supreme Court, that this is not a case of the state and the federal government having a difference of opinion about actual immigration enforcement. This is an invasion. Federal government's leading it, and the states do retain their sovereignty. I mean, that was pretty clear. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, lays out federal powers. Section 10 of Article 1, Section 10 says the things that states can specifically not do. Then you have the Bill of Rights to include the 9th and 10th Amendment. And in a nutshell, the 10th Amendment says anything not delegated to the federal government is retained by the states. Well, the states still have some level of sovereignty, which the courts have recognized over the years. If the state does not have the sovereignty to protect themselves from an invasion, even though that invasion is being led by the federal government, then you can forget all the rights and limitations that we have, limitations on the federal government, rights that we supposedly have as being recognized. Forget that. They're basically saying that whatever, and we've heard this for years, whatever the Supreme Court says is the Constitution. That's an insane idea. I understand that we have deferred to them throughout much of our history, but at what point in time do you say no? This is too far.
Well, as individuals and citizens, we were all created equal by our Creator, and we all have rights. It's God-given rights. And the problem, and my counterpart down in Lawrence County, Brandon Taylor, has coined it all started in the church house.
Yep.
We have constantly sat back as constitutional Christians and let this federal government erode away our rights, just like an iceberg melting.
Yep.
They have chipped away at them little by little by little over a period of 200 years.
Yep. And most in about the last 70 years,
They sort of like that snowball rolling downhill,
Yeah.
It's gotten faster and faster. We'll keep it clean and white and pure, okay?
Yeah.
But it's that snowball effect. And in the last 70 years, it's just, hey, listen, the last 5 years, it's really spun out of control.
Yeah. We let them tell us that we couldn't have prayer in schools. We let them tell us that abortion was a constitutional right. Then we let them tell us that we had to accept gay marriage. And we've said, well, that's what the court says we have to do, which is just totally insane. And none of those things would have been acceptable to the founding generation or most other generations in this country. It's just, it's ridiculous that we've allowed it. So now we're at the point, back in the Civil War, and I'm not a big Lincoln fan, okay, but I do want to quote something he said. He said that the Constitution is not a suicide pact. Now, that's not exactly in reference to the same situation we're dealing with today, but here's the deal. If you believe that the states have to do anything and everything the Supreme Court says, created out of whole cloth or not, then the Constitution is a suicide pact for states. If you believe that you just have to do whatever the court says.
Yeah, that's right. It's sort of like, I guess we could put the word political suicide in front of it, Yeah. And we've let these quasi forms of the branches of government take away what is truly our constitutional rights.
Yeah.
And people just, they follow. It's like an old cow keeps following that same path, and people get indoctrinated. Yep. And they follow right along with it, and they don't stand up for what's right. It's time to stand up. It's way past time, and push back.
Yep. We the people doesn't mean anything if the people don't stand up and make it mean something. And the best way to do that is to force your state to stand up for you. And I'm talking nullification. I'm going to say right now, and I'm not sure, I've heard conflicting things about in Texas today because I thought I had read something where they had already allowed the feds to cut some of the wire, and then I thought I read somewhere else that, that they were resisting allowing them access. So I don't know. I do think that this is critical to not just Texas, but to the whole country. This is the time for a state to step. If you don't agree with, if you don't think that we need nullification now, when would we ever need it? And Texas needs to give a big Texas-sized finger to the court and to the Biden administration. That's what they need to do, and all the other states need to support them in any way, shape, or form that they can, in my opinion.
You're trying to say Texas needs to give them that big one-finger salute.
Absolutely.
But you think about everything that's going on. Immigration's a big thing, and just to bring it down to things that right now that's going to affect Tennessee, and I talked about it a little bit on our show that we have down in Lawrenceburg last night, is, you drive up down these interstates and you see the marquees up there, wiper lights on when raining, slow down.
Yeah.
Or turn around, don't drown. The Federal Highway Administration is now coming down and saying, hey, we're going to take control of what's being put on those signs. You can't put anything on there like "buckle up, Buttercup." They're going to start telling the states, hey, this cannot be on these signs. So every time you turn around, they're inching. It's like sliding a piece of paper, and you just keep moving that piece of paper until you push people off the edge. So
Yep.
You know, there was an old song one time said, "Don't push me, I'm close to the edge." Well, a lot of people ought to be close to that edge right now because the government has totally come in and pushed us into a corner. And what happens when you push a sleeping dog into a corner? He's eventually going to bite you.
Yep. If you think about it, they push us on the school issues. I mean, it's well beyond taking prayer out of school. Now it's all the perversity they're pushing in the schools. Okay, all the PC garbage, all the CRT garbage that they push, that comes from the federal government with complicity by our state, even though our state has, in some cases, tried to pass laws against it. Thus far, those laws, in my opinion, have not really had much teeth, or they just have not been enforced. They push that. They push, they're pushing to change the demographics of our country, and mostly it's the goal is they want to replace us, and they want a population that will support socialist type government. And
well, what they're trying to do is make all citizens what I call recipients of the government.
Yep.
They're trying to make us dependents and be independent upon the government.
Yep.
And, just like with, with this major winter blast that came through and has crippled this area where I'm at for over 8 days now. And there's still schools in our county are still closed tomorrow. There's some back roads that are solid sheets of ice. And to add insult to injury, we've got major water issues throughout this county. Every utility district in this county, we're on a boil order. Oh, and wow. So that's part of it too. So, and then people are hollering, well, what's the government? What's the government going to do for me? And it's, there's the infrastructure the government needs to, our county and city governments need to maintain through our tax dollars. But, they can't go out here and go buy your bottled water for you when you knew the storm was coming. There were so many people that were so unprepared, and now they're standing back and wanting handouts.
Yep. Just like after Hurricane Katrina.
The same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing. Remember the Superdome.
Yeah. But it's also a shame too that it seems like every time we have any kind of storm or any kind of natural disaster, the first thing our state does, hey, let's see if we can get some federal relief funds for it. I'm like, wait a minute, we got that rainy day fund. I mean, what's that for? Do we ever take care of our own? I'm just curious. I mean, and it's not just our state. Every state does that. If there's a storm anywhere, it's automatic. We're going to go begging to the federal government for money. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, they do this declaration of federal emergency, for that state, and you are correct.
Yeah. But I think it's sad that they're trying to they're allowing our country to be invaded. They're pushing perversion and CRT and other garbage in our schools. At the same time, just like you saw with the NACS last week, they're trying to take control of land, resources, and it's just like that song, "Richmond, North of Richmond" by Anthony Oliver. They want to have total control, and so we've got to force our state to push back. That's why I'm so big on 10th Amendment nullification. That's why I think the most important bill in the legislature this session. And I know it hasn't actually been filed yet, but it's going to be refiled. It'll be House Bill 0726 and Senate Bill 1092, House sponsor Bud Halsey, Senate sponsor Janet Bowling. That's the most important legislation, in my opinion, or among the most in our legislature this year.
Well, listen, you got a tough House member there in Bud Halsey, and then, of course, a great senator. She's in the top 3, and I think on the Tennessee report card, she was number 1 over in the Coffee County area, Janice Bowling.
Yep. Good.
So, you got great people there. I always give a shout out to Janice Bowling and my own Senator Joy Hensley, and you got a great one up there in Wilson County, Mark Pody.
Yep. So we're going to talk now. We're going to switch to the SEC. Okay, so it's officially it is State Executive Committee, and in this case, we're talking about the GOP State Executive Committee for Tennessee, the Republican Party in Tennessee. But now way too often it seems like SEC stands for swampy elitist committee or sorry excuse committee, but it is actually supposed to be state executive committee, right?
Right, and we don't want people to get it confused with the Southeastern Conference neither.
Right.
So, that's easy to do. People say, oh, you work for the SEC,
Yeah.
and not the Security and Exchange Commission either.
Right.
But yeah, it is a Republican state executive committee. The Democrats have one as well. But the way it's made up, I don't know what the Democrats do and don't care. All I'm concerned about is our true conservatism. And we are made up of 33 senatorial districts throughout this great state. And out of those 33 senatorial districts, there is a state executive committee woman per district, and that means 33 women. And there's a state executive committee man for that district, and that means there's 33 men. Total added together, there's 66 state executive committee members. And the sole responsibility is that we have set the ground rules or the bylaws for our state, for the Republican Party.
Right. So what's going, I mean, that's what they're supposed to do, but you're having some issues these days. Actually, anybody who's followed it knows we've had issues for a while. So tell us a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes there in the SEC.
Well, there are a lot of good people on the SEC. We all bring different ideas to the table. That's why we're called humans, because we all think different, But anyway, we have a strict bylaw in there that to be what's called a bona fide Republican. And a lot of people get this confused. Bona fide Republican to run for a office, you have to have a voting record at 3 out of the last 4 statewide primaries. That does include presidential primaries as well.
Yeah.
So you just can't skip that presidential primary because that'll count against you where you lose one of your criterias. But it is 3 out of the last 4. And the 4 most recent was August of 2018. And then you had 2 chances in 20. You had the presidential primary in March of 20, and then the statewide primary again in August of 20, and then the most recent was August of 22. But this year, you have a chance to get 2, 3 out of 4, with the 2024 presidential primary coming up in this state, March the 5th. And then again in August, the statewide primary. So once we pass the presidential primary in March, we'll drop off August of 2018. Okay. But it's 3 out of the last 4. If I could have it my way, like Burger King, it would be 4 out of 4. But the bylaws say 3 out of 4.
Yeah.
And that's it. It don't say 4 out of 4. It don't say 1 out of 4, 0 out of 4. It's 3 out of 4 to be what's called a bona fide Republican. And what they look at for being bona fide Republicans, that's even being, Dave, both you and I are county party chairs. And we have to be 3 out of 3, according to the state bylaws of the Republican Party. And so we can't miss a beat out of the last 3. So I know you meet that criteria. I meet that criteria, but here to run for a office like a county office, like school board, and don't think for 1 second these school board seats are not important.
Very important.
And we'll talk about that in just a second. But this is becoming an infight. I know in Williamson County, there's problems, I think, manifesting up in Montgomery County, and I know in Knox County. And what's happened, there's been people that are getting on the ballot or wanting to be on the ballot, and they're 1 out of 4. And the party bylaws say 3 out of 4.
Right.
Well, what happens in your senatorial district, you got 2 good people up there. Tess Robbins is your committee woman.
Yep.
and Ryan Ellengood is your committee man. They're great people, great individuals,
Yep.
and they do follow the bylaws. So let's pick on your county, Stewart County, or Henry County, either one of them, and say you got a person that wants to get on to run as a Republican in a school board race in District 2 in that county, and they're 1 out of 4. Well, they're going to go before these two fine individuals, and they're going to both tell them, no, we appreciate you being 1 out of 4. Keep voting, and eventually you can get 3 out of 4, just like I described. If you vote both times in 24, the next thing you'll be is 3 out of 4 after August.
Yeah, and I had some issues like that in Stewart County. And matter of fact, I called Tess, like you said, she's our SCC rep, one of them, and her and Ryan do a great job. And Tess confirmed. I had some people running for school board, I had some people running one for assessor, and I said, hey, can you verify that these people are bona fide? And some of them that were running as Republicans were, and some weren't. The ones that weren't bona fide, I had to call and tell them, hey, you are not bona fide. And that's what I'm supposed to do, and that's what Tess is supposed to do, and that's what everybody in these positions across the state is supposed to do. Think about it for just a minute. 3 out of the last 4. That's really not a very, very high standard. You could have been a 2-time Obama voter and still qualify to run as a Republican now. Okay?
If you're 3 out of 4, that is absolutely correct.
Yeah. Yeah, or you could have voted for Hillary in 2016 and still. So it's already a low standard. If it were up to me, buddy, we'd be going back a whole lot further.
Well, I like and Tess and I talk from time to time. I like 10 out of 10.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
And people say, "Whoa, you're not going to win people over to the Republican Party." Well, I want true Republicans representing me. That's why we have. We hear this all the time in the great state of Tennessee. Gosh, we got a super majority. We got a Republican governor, and we got 75 House members that are Republican out of 99, and we got 27 Republican state senators out of 33. We got a super majority all the way across the board.
But what kind of Republicans are they?
They sure don't act like it. I've used this analogy of the dipstick Republicans. I want to stay up there where my oil is crisp and just changed and full. It's on the full fledged, and that's where I consider myself. People just like Tess, they're up there at the top. Then you get down to where that dipstick says add a quart. Well, we got some folks in the Senate and the House and in the House and on the SEC that are running a quart low, okay? And then we got a few that don't even register on the dipstick. We got some serious situations with those that don't even have anything where you can't even get any liquid on the dipstick. So, that's what I call the dipstick mentality. But, you talked about the trans Republicans. We got people who just gerrymander through. They don't know whether they're gay or straight or they're male or female. And I'm a guy that's just going to call a spade a spade. And if people get mad, they got the same pants to get glad in, they get mad in. So the problem that we have, we set these bylaws, and one of the most recent changes, and it's had several of us, including myself, upset. We met in Mount Juliet, Tennessee in August as a full body, and about out of the 66, there was close to 55 members present, and we talked about things. And there was one thing that was talked about in Article 9 of the bylaws about we didn't want to go into the future and give Democrats a reprieve. We wanted it to pick up and go forward immediately. And the majority or the consensus that day of just about everybody in that room, it wasn't 100%. That's the way we felt. But Chairman Scott Golden said, hey, we got to put out a notice in 30 days, and then we'll have a meeting and have a special call meeting. and this special call meeting was by Zoom. And I know you and I are Zooming right now as two individuals, but we're having a great conversation. But you imagine, and there again, there wasn't 66 members present that day by Zoom either. I couldn't tell you how many were present that day, but it got convoluted.
Yep.
And people didn't understand. People were having signal problems with Wi-Fi. It was an utter disaster. And then some folks are impatient, don't know how to turn a mic off and say things. They need to keep their mouth shut. And a lot of things went on. And it kind of ticked me off. And I made a determination in my mind that day, just like I'm on this Zoom call with you, I'll never participate by Zoom again as long as I serve as a state executive committee member. That is an utter disaster. Now, if our committee, and I happen to be on the election committee of the SEC, if we're doing a Zoom meeting, I think there's 14 of us on there. 14 are better than 50. Okay. Right. But then you get some people who try to showboat and take over the conversation. And the call was to deal with this being 4/24 and not 26. Now, I'm going to make a bold statement. I don't understand why we're even arguing about 24 or 26, because our bylaws say 3 out of 4. So we got to go back 4 years,
right?
No matter whether it says 24 or 26. And we're all hung up and griping and complaining at each other's throat, and we didn't understand. And on that Zoom meeting in September, I was one. There were 13 people who voted no because there was somebody, and I don't know who, because you couldn't keep up with what. And this one would talk, and then you imagine we've got a split screen right now, but you imagine having 50 screens.
Just chaos.
And it's total chaos, and everybody trying to overtalk everybody. And somebody said, well, I make a motion that we move it to 26. Well, we didn't take a vote on that. My memory don't remember taking a vote. But the thing about it, we went against our own bylaws. We were having a call to deal with what we came out in August out of our meeting. And then somebody wanted to make a change to that, which was against the bylaws. And if you were going to make a change, you were going to have another, as I call it, a 30-day cooling off period. Well, a lot of people thought they were actually voting for 24, but then they moved it to 26, and people were just totally confused. And, at the TFA banquet in September over in Lebanon, that's where there was, what 9 of us as SEC members, maybe 10 there. And we were all talking, and some of them didn't vote. A lot of us there voted no. We were part of that the major part of the 13. But some said, hey, I thought this was the way it was, and I was confused. And I talked to a lady yesterday, and she didn't have a true understanding of it. That's on the SEC. Good person. But we need to be transparent. We need to be able to tell exactly what we're voting on, because, hey, hang on a minute, everybody shut up, and especially if you're on a Zoom meeting, here's what it is. And it just went by so quick. Ask Tess, ask Ryan. It went by so quick because they were 2 of the no votes as well with me. But people just didn't understand. And I'm scratching my head and said, man, in August, everybody, what happened? I'm trying to figure out. But it, at the end of the day, my whole thing about this, and we're having a special call meeting this upcoming Saturday on the 27th, but we need to address some issues, because the bylaws say 3 out of 4. It don't have a year date or anything on there. At the end of the day, it's 3 out of 4. But we've got some members of the SEC that want to say, oh, well, they're 1 out of 4. I know they're a good Republican. They've been donating to Marsha Blackburn's senatorial campaign, or they give money to the state party, or they're out putting up signs for this Republican. They come to the Republican GOP Reagan Day dinners. They're good Republicans. So we can, it used to be called a word vouching.
Right.
That people would vouch for them. And every time I've seen this vouching, it has turned around to bite people in the rear end. Yeah. Big case in point was in Knox County with them approving Eddie Manis.
Yeah. A known Democrat, a known flamer, a known anti-Trumper. And I understand Bill Haslam was involved with this. I know that Representative Faison, who's I think our floor leader, majority leader, or whatever he is, and let's see, Tim Burchett was involved with it. Kane, the mayor of Knoxville, they were all involved with backing this Democrat, known Democrat, who had just voted against Trump and was a known homosexual. They all vouched for this guy to run against a bona fide Republican.
Yeah, Lamar Alexander was in that bunch as well.
Yeah, and, the usual suspects.
Yeah, but that was totally wrong, and he was open practicing homosexual as well. Yep. So this guy was totally off the grid for the 2016 platform, national platform we go by. Yep. So we put this gentleman in over a true bona fide Republican. Well, the same thing is happening now, and I'm telling you, and I'm going to say this again, these school boards are very important. Yep. Don't think for a minute they're not. And people, Williamson County, right at Christmas time, 2 SEC members up there, one said no, one said yes, and then it went to a political subcommittee of the SEC, which is 12 members of the SEC. 2 of those members were absent for whatever reason. One member said he didn't even get a notification of those 2. Okay? So you got 2 members absent, you got 10 present, doing it by Zoom. Okay? 9 out of those 10 went in favor of the 1 out of 4 and went totally against our state party bylaws. And 1 said no, said they are not bona fide.
Do you want to talk about, it's up to you if you want to name any of the people who were voting on that.
Well, I know who the person was that voted to go by the bylaws, and that's a representative over in Senatorial District 12 by the name of Ben Gann, great individual. And the other 9, they just... if we're not going to follow the bylaws, throw them out the window.
Right.
This is what gets me hot under the collar, is because we have people that do this. And see, in Williamson County, my counterpart, committee woman Angie McClanahan, she and I share about somewhere around 38,000 folks that we represent in Williamson County. And Joy Hensley Senatorial District, and the other Senatorial District is Senator Jack Johnson. Well, right at Christmas time, these people up there start calling and said, "Hey, we need your help." And okay, who are you? And they started telling me who they were, and they started telling real quick. You could tell they were mad and what happened. So I called one of the SEC members in Jack Johnson's senatorial district and asked, and it was the female, and I asked her, what in the heck's going on? And then that's when I found out how her committee man and her as a committee woman, she was for enforcing a 3 out of 4, and the committee man said no. Let's let the political committee decide. So then it went to the political committee, and I'm going to tell you, and I'll tell each one of them, the 9 that voted to let these 1 out of 4s on, I'm very upset with you, because you're what I call one of those out of court. You're on your dipstick. You need a quart of oil. You need to understand what the bylaws say. And and I can tell you by Zoom, I can tell you face to face, it don't matter. you did not follow the state party bylaws.
So,
period.
as far as the SEC members for that district, okay, for that school board race, in which they decided, or one of them voted to allow this person to run for the school board who had only, as a Republican, who had only voted one time as a Republican out of the last four instead of the 3 out of the 4. So Cindy Miller, I think, was the one of the committee members. She voted to uphold the bylaws and said no.
That is correct.
And Steve Albrooks is the one who said, gave a yes vote to the one who had only voted one time out of 4. Basically,
that is correct.
Ignore the bylaws.
So Steve's running a court low.
At least.
So, it ain't about whether I like you or how long I've known you. The thing is, let's do the right thing.
Right.
And one thing that upset me, they wanted to start talking about it, and it came out of the bylaws committee. I was totally against vouching. I really wanted 4 out of 4. I wanted to do away with vouching. They came out with this fancy word called a waiver, that they could get a waiver.
Same thing. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. At the end of the day, they're kissing cousins.
Yeah.
No matter how you look at it, all we did was change the adjective.
Right.
And it's very aggravating when, there's a lot, it's just caused a lot of animosity in Williamson County. And it's sad. And you want to, the Democrats, they stick together like fleas on a dog's back. And here we have 4 to 5 different facets of Republicans. And if we'd simply just follow the 2016 platform, the best one ever out there, and follow our own state party bylaws, you and I would not be having this discussion.
And you mentioned the situation there in 2020 with when they vouched for Eddie Manis. Well, in response to that, because that was basically the current chairman Scott Golden's decision, all right? The SEC as a body voted against that. He had the authority at the time, and he decided to go along with it. Well, in response to that, the SEC passed, hey, look, it's no longer going to be on the chairman, okay? It's going to be those SEC members and I guess this other board that is set up if there's still some dispute about that, correct?
Yeah, this political, before I came on the SEC, they had already, kind of, and I know Scott was relieved. He didn't have to make that one decision, but, when you look at his role, he has to balance. It's a balancing act because you got these donors that give money.
Right.
And in the August SEC meeting, I asked for a vote of no confidence on that Lieutenant Governor, Randy McNally.
Which he deserved a vote of no confidence.
Because of his shenanigans.
Yep.
He's an utter disgrace to this great state.
Absolutely.
And he got his 15 minutes of fame being on Saturday Night Live and making us look like a bunch of backwoods hillbillies, okay? And by what he did. It's an utter disgrace. I don't care how you look at it. And I told somebody one time, when that man set a bill to make the Bible the official book of the state of Tennessee and didn't let it go, I said, there's a problem with him. Well, that problem surfaced, didn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, another thing we as SEC members should be able to do, if it's one of our state representatives or fellow state SEC members, man or woman, or one of our state senators or our governor, they do something that's wrong, we need to call them out.
Yep.
They need to be sanctioned. And I carried, you mentioned Jeremy Faison.
Yep.
He's a caucus
chair
leader.
Yep.
He's caucus chair.
Should have been gone 2 years ago.
And he went out on a basketball court at a high school basketball game and tried to jerk a referee's pants down.
Yep.
They should have sanctioned him right then. And I'm talking about the caucus, but also the SEC.
Yeah.
That's an utter disgrace, utter embarrassment.
Absolutely.
And if he's got a problem with it, he can get my phone number and call me. We can talk about it. I'll go up and have a cup of coffee and we'll talk about it. But that is an utter disgrace. That is poor leadership. I don't care how you look at it.
Absolutely.
So, there's no questioning where I stand. And it's either get right or get left, and I want to be on the right side. I don't want to be on the left side.
So what else needs to happen as far as either who needs to be called out or what bylaws need to be changed or fixed to get the SEC on track?
We need to follow our bylaws, number one.
Right.
And if we've got committee members that can't follow the bylaws, they need to be primary. Pure and simple. Let the people decide. But a lot of people in your counties don't understand what a state executive committee member is.
Yep.
And these state executive committee members, just like myself, we're supposed to be involved heavily with the county parties in each county we represent. And that don't always happen neither.
Right. Because
one of the things that you find out sometimes, even these county parties are not following party bylaws. And that's aggravating, but that's where you have the leadership of the SEC. It's supposed to help them understand and do the right thing.
Right.
And don't educate them to do the wrong thing. Because everybody just, when this vouching thing comes up, oh, we'll just vouch. Oh, yeah. I'll give you an example. I had one that in our own county that was 2 out of 4, and people started hollering, well, we can vouch. I'm going to vouch. They're this, they're that. They homeschool. They go to church. They do this. They do that. They've helped at this campaign. Well, that 2 out of 4 came back to bite us in the rear end. Okay.
Yep.
So that vouching, to me, I said, this ain't never going to happen again, because I just took a firm stance. You either are or you're not. So it's just sad that we've slipped off the wheel, where some of us are missing a lug nut or two on the wheel.
Like we've already said, 3 out of 4 is not a very high standard. You could have been a bleeding, screaming heart liberal for most of your life and finally came to your senses. And think about it, just 3 out, it's already such a low standard. I don't even know why you would consider including vouching in it. And what's the hurry? If you're just now, why anybody 1 out of 4, 2 out of 4? Okay, you weren't voting right, and you're probably, you're obviously just now getting involved with the party. Why do you think you're entitled to run just because you want to? Just because you've done a few good things here and there, but you don't have a proven history.
Right. You're not entitled.
Yeah.
I tell people, hey, we love that you're 1 out of 4. You got to earn your stripes.
Yep.
Just hang on. You're going to get to earn 2 stripes. You're going to move from a private to a corporal to a sergeant. If you got 1 stripe right now, you're a private. And if you vote in the Republican presidential primary in March, you'll move up to a corporal. Then you vote in August in the statewide primary as a Republican. Gosh, dog, you're a sergeant. Then if you move up and you get 4 out of 4 in 2026 in the statewide primary in August of 26, man, you'll be a master sergeant. Just think about that, So that's the way you can look at it. I call it earning your stripes.
Yeah.
We appreciate people that are transitioning over to the party, and they finally quit drinking the Kool-Aid, and they understand Bidenomics. If it ain't woke you up, you ain't never going to be woke up. But people are transitioning, and it takes just a little time. It don't take a lot of time. And like I said, if you voted in August of 22 and you got your first stripe as a private, and in March of 24, you get that second stripe, you're a corporal. And then in August of 24, you get that third stripe, you become a sergeant. So that's the way you need to look at it.
Now, I know we don't really per se care about the Democrats, but the question has come up. Do we know what do they have the same standard, or do you know what theirs are? I'm just asking. There was a question, so I was just curious.
Their material is not on my
I got you. My guess is, though, let's say somebody who had been a longtime Republican, I have a hard time believing, especially depending on what issues, I have a hard time believing that they would they would probably have a higher standard than what we do before they would trust a person.
Well, let's give an example of that in the House. Great individual. I think a lot of him over in Memphis was elected to that House seat 13 consecutive times.
Oh, you're talking about John DeBerry. The only Democrat in our state who was a decent person. Only one.
And still is a great man. He is now the senior advisor to the governor. So Governor Lee thought enough. And hey, I give a shout out to Governor Lee because he picked a great man to be his senior advisor. I promise you that. A good Christian man. He don't care about the same-sex marriage. He's totally against any abortion. But guess what the Democrats did?
Threw him out of the party.
They threw him out of the party. A good, solid Christian individual.
Yep.
Who had conservative principles. Yep. And they threw him out of the party.
Yep.
What an utter disgrace. Now, last year in the session, John always talks, and they have him come in, and he did a talk about Dr. King. Very great talk, educated people, and those two clowns, yes, I said them two clowns of the Tennessee Three, yep. Them two Justins,
yep.
They stood up and turned their back to John
DeBerry.
They turned their back on him.
Yep.
Okay. And it's just like John told me. He said that was a disgrace to him and to Dr. King. He said, they don't even know what they're representing. They're just pure activists.
The Democrats now are communists. Cut and dried, they are communists. There's no redeeming qualities in the Democrat Party today, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to hit one thing because I hear this a lot. Now, the SEC and the vouching and the bona fide, that's been an issue off and on for several years, okay? But here's what I have noticed. Now, we've got this one extreme case of we got people who should know better wanting, ignoring the bylaws and wanting to allow somebody to run for school board who's only voted as a Republican one time. And that should not be happening, okay? But there are some people who I know who've, let's say they've only started getting involved in the last few years, that they know about what happened in 2020. They may not be aware that the rules were supposedly changed to fix that kind of stuff, but then when we go put somebody in, allow somebody to run who's only voted one time, it looks really, it really looks flaky. Well, a lot of them are convinced that this whole bona fide thing is a bad deal. And I just, like I say, you've got to have some standard. You can't just, okay, I'm involved now, I'm doing good things, and I should be able to run. But there are some good people who just totally distrust the SEC and think that having a standard of, bona fide, they just think it's a bad thing in general. And I think we have to have it. We have to have a standard, in my opinion.
Well, you do.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying that some of the SEC members, what has gone on, and especially with this political committee with 9
right.
doing what they did, they just threw the bylaws out the window.
Yep.
And there was some people who didn't put their name in the hat in Williamson County because they knew they wasn't bona fide. They were told they wasn't bona fide, so they didn't even bother. Now they're fussing that we let these weak-kneed, really Democrats get on the ballot. Mm. And how, they respected our laws, and then we turn around and we just, we threw them out the window. So now they feel rejected. And matter of fact, they want their refund from the Republican Party, their dues. So it's created problems.
Absolutely.
And people can't see the forest for looking at the darn trees, you know.
Well, anything else you want to leave us with on the SEC?
Well, that's about the the short and the narrow, we have, if people don't understand bona fide by now, they never will. The only thing that I want to clarify, of course, my dear friend Orlando, and you know who I'm talking about, he thought you had to be bona fide to vote at the polls that way. And I said, no. But I will tell you, you do have to be bona fide to participate in a reorganization in Stewart County Republican Party, in Giles County Republican Party, in Williamson County Republican Party. Yep. And because you've heard me tell you, Williamson County had the largest reorganization of any county in the great state of Tennessee. And there's 94 parties in this county. We got one county that doesn't have a party. But out of the 94, Williamson had the largest. It was over 600 people who voted in that reorganization, but they had to be bona fide. Well, I had problems with people sitting there and saying, and I'm looking at a GOP database. And I said, sir, you're 1 out of 4. Oh, your records are wrong. They want to go to argue with you. And I said, well, I ain't seen them be wrong yet. Yeah. And then I would have certain ones come over and say, oh, you don't understand. You don't know these people up here, Chris. These are good people. They helped in Marcia's campaigns. They did this, they did that.
Does that make you good?
Huh?
Does that make you good?
Well, I'm glad they did. I don't have a problem, with a person being good. It's not about whether you're good or bad. It's about whether you're bona fide.
Right.
And then I was challenged because I made a call as an SEC member not to let a couple participate. So then they brought in Chairman Golden. And one thing I'll give Scott right then that day, he said, no, sir, your records show. And then they want to argue with you, They still want to argue with you, but you can't argue your record,
Right.
So that's the bad thing about it. And anybody who happens to listen to this that may have moved from another state into our great state, we're glad you came, but I hope you came here for the right reason. And if you came from California, I hope you left those left coast ways out in California and you left for the right reason. But for us to check your record, and you may have just registered in 21 in whatever county you live in, you need to get your record from California to show that you voted as a Republican. So that's, and just because you moved doesn't mean you're not a bona fide Republican, okay? You just got to prove your voting record. We can look at your record since you've been here, but we can't look at it from California.
Right. Well, hey, thanks for being on, and thanks for all you do, Chris. Thank you for speaking up in the SEC and in other places, and I'd like to have you back on sometime.
Hey, I've enjoyed it. Love to have you back down. You've been on our show, and it helps make Mary go round. So look forward to being back with you.
I'd like to get on that one again too. I want to thank all of you for. Well, and you're definitely welcome, and we'll definitely do it again. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to watch our program. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as well as the notification bell to stay informed on upcoming stories. As a reminder, you can now listen to us on podcast at Spreaker.com. You can find all the audio-only podcasts of your favorite episodes on our website, TennesseeInformer.com, or do a search for the Tennessee Informer on Spreaker.com. You can download the Spreaker app for Android or Apple phones to listen while you're on the go. We're also excited to announce Tennessee Informer podcasts are now available to listen to on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music, and several other platforms. There are ways to watch and listen, so stay tuned as we add additional platforms. Also, please take a moment to check out and follow our Facebook page at Tennessee Informer. We'll be posting a lot of news and information on there, as well as our website, TennesseeInformer.com. You can sign up for a weekly newsletter. We're also on Twitter now at Twitter.com/TNInformer. Share us with your friends so that they keep up to date what's going on in our state. Our guest next week, January 30th, will be Chris Spencer, who is running for state senate in District 18 against a known rhino. I mean a rhino's rhino, Farrell Hell. So make sure you tune into that. Chris is a staunch conservative. He is one of us. That's it for now. Good night from Paris, Tennessee, that is.